In this activity, we'll be creating our own functions and utilizing them in a program. Once you're ready, let's hop into Visual Studio Code and get started. Once Visual Studio Code loads, navigate to your Activities directory. We are on Activity 1, so double-click on a1.rs. Once the activity file loads, review the topic and program requirements. Attempt to implement a solution on your own with the video paused. Once completed, resume the video and I will demonstrate my implementation as well as provide insights to the activity topic. Okay, let's get started. So this activity is about functions. So we'll probably be making use of functions in this program. If we go down to the program requirements, we can see that we need to make a program that displays both your first and last name. Now this can be accomplished easily just using a single print line. However, we do want to make use of functions. As indicated in the notes state that we should use a function twice to display your first and last name. So we're going to need two separate functions, one to display your first name and one to display your last name. So what I like to do is copy the notes. I'll copy the first two lines and use these as guides on how I should structure my program. So here we have use a function. So here I'm just going to make my function. So we have fn for the function keyword. So fn creates a new function. I'm going to name this function first name. We don't need any function arguments because all we're going to do is print out my name. We also don't need to return any values. So I'm going to use the curly braces immediately. Next, we need to print out the first name. I'm using the print line macro. I'm going to put my name in there and end the line with a semicolon. Remember, when dealing with strings, you want to use double quotes. And when using the print line macro, you want to terminate the line with a semicolon. Let's go down here to the other comment. So we have use a function to display your last name. I'm going to use the fn keyword to create a new function. I'll call this one last name. Again, we don't have any arguments and we don't have any return values. So I'm just going to use the curly braces. I'll then call the print line macro and type in my last name. I'll then finish up the line with a semicolon just as before. As we can see, we have our functions that look like they should work properly. However, if we take a look at the main function down here, we're not actually using these functions we just made. So if we were to run the program, there's nothing in the main function, so nothing will actually happen. So we need to go down here and call our functions that we just made. So remember, to call functions, we type in the name of the function, and then the parentheses for any function arguments. We don't have any, so we don't include anything in the parentheses. We then terminate the line with a semicolon. So that will call the first name function. And then we need to call the last name function in order to fulfill the program requirements. So we also call the last name function. And there we go. Here's our complete program. Before we execute it, let's walk through the code and see how it should work. And then hopefully it works as we think it should. So first, the program starts at the main function. We then go down to the first name function call. The first name function call will go over to here, first name. And then the first line in the first name function is a print line macro. So it will print out JSON onto the terminal. There's the end of the statement with a semicolon. There's no other lines available in the function, just one print line macro. So after that executes, it will then return to where it left off. Here we have the semicolon, so there's nothing additional after calling the first name function. So this line is then complete. Then we go on to the next line, last name. So we'll call the last name function. We'll go over here. The print line macro will then get executed. That's the end of the statement. There's nothing else. Control then returns back to the last name line. Again, that's the end of the statement, so there's nothing left to execute. So that one will be done. We then go on to the next line. Since there is no next line, as we can see here, there's only two lines. The program will then terminate and it should be completed. So let's run this and see if it actually executes as we expect. So the way we'll be running programs for these activities is using a terminal. To do so, go up to Terminal on the top, and then click on New Terminal. A new terminal will open up at the bottom of the screen, and you'll have your terminal prompt. Your terminal prompt may look different than mine, and that's totally okay because everybody has different terminal prompts, and you can customize it to whatever suits your needs. To run the program, we will type in cargo, which is the Rust build and package management tool, run to run the program, and then 2 dashes, bin for binary. So the binary is an executable program. Each activity is considered its own binary. So we need to also type in the name of this binary. So this one is A1. As you can see up here, this is binary A1. We type in the same thing here. We do not need the RS portion because everything is always going to be an RS with the activities. Once you hit enter, we should see some status messages informing us of the build process, and then our program will run automatically. As we can see, the program ran, and here is the output. So we have my first name, followed by my last name, just as stated in the program requirements. Before I finish up this video, I want to point out these steps taken by the cargo tool. So first we have compiling. This would be the step that takes your code and turns it into machine instructions for the CPU to execute. Once it's done, we get a message saying it was finished, the amount of time it took, and then we get a message saying that the program is running. If you don't want to see these messages every time you run the program, you can pass a special flag into the cargo tool called -q. So let's give it a try. So if we type in cargo run -q --bin for your binary, and then your activity number, it will run the program without those status messages. This can be useful if you're just making small changes and you don't need to know how long it took to compile the program, nor do you need to know whether it was in debug or release mode. This concludes the first activity video. I'll see you in the next presentation.